anonymous investors who've pledged €300,000 to the campaign. Dublin Rape Crisis Centre Chief Executive Nolene Blackwell says the initiative will be aimed at all age groups.
It will be aimed at adults who are at work and who engage in sexual harassment or who may not know what to do if they're being harassed at work. It has to go right across society because part is it's not something we talk about.
That's it for now. We'll have more at 8.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Watch Ireland bash Boris's boys in Twickenham with a Ryanair flight to London.
Mainly dry with clear spells, becoming windy overnight with near gale force gusts in the southwest. A band of heavy rain will move from the southwest and extend over much of Munster by morning. Lowest temperatures tonight of 0 to +3 degrees with frost in places. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
You're welcome along. Monday evening here in Off the Ball. Manchester United fans probably had a suspicion they were headed for choppy waters across March. Already seems we have a few men overboard. Certainly would be if Roy Keane had his way. Danny Mills with us for a chat this hour. Pat Nevin is on the way after 9. We'll have Jerry Thornley and Matt Williams on Monday Night Rugby. Twickenham beckons for Ireland this Saturday, 4:45 kickoff. Chat to the two lads after 8. 53106 is the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Ronan Mullen, hello.
Hi, Joe.
Look at Fred. No, look at Fred. No, look at Fred. Look at Fred. How many times can a man say look at Fred? For a while I was like, wait, where is Fred? I couldn't go then. And then you did see him standing on the edge of the penalty area, and it was a bad moment for Fred. And Roy Keane has been waiting for a long time to really finish off Fred.
Yeah.
He wanted to grab Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and ask him one question: why are you still playing Fred? And so it was time to finish Fred off yesterday. Then again, who survived yesterday is the question.
And poor Scott McTominay, who's equally a lightning rod for this from less so Roy Keane, but more Manchester United fans at large, that, you know, typifies the sort of average nature of much of that squad. Is just potentially harsh on him. I think with the right coaching, he has the fundamentals to be a good player.
Yeah.
But just hasn't necessarily developed given that dearth of coaching. And he, quote unquote, fronted up, Joe, after the game. He was the one that did the Sky Sports media anyway. And he almost said more in what he didn't say. It was what I gleaned from it, because Jeff Shreves asked him a question about, you know, maybe deeper seated issues than what was just the game yesterday. And McTominay immediately went to like stuff going on in the background. He said, that's not my domain, you know, I'm focusing on what's ahead of me. But that's not necessarily what Jeff Shreves was talking about. So that's what the fact that that's what McTominay jumped to would suggest that is very much hanging over these players. And there's just a endemic uncertainty around much of what Man United are doing at the moment.
He did also say when it came to effort, he'd have to watch the game back and check body language, as opposed to, no, of course we were all working hard out there. We all try our best. Richie McCormack, good evening.
Hey, Joe.
Ronaldo rumours abounding. So didn't start the game and went back to Portugal, and then it was rumours of an injury. So Neil Custis in The Sun, for instance, and these kind of reports are everywhere at the moment. So Cristiano Ronaldo complained of a hip injury and flew to Portugal after, which is the crucial point, being axed from Manchester United's team for their derby defeat. The superstar was stunned to be told by boss Ralph Rangnick he would not be starting against Man City. Rangnick said he wanted fresh legs for the match and that he believed Ronaldo could make an impact from the bench, but the United legend insisted he could do that from the start. He was furious at being axed. Sun Sport understands his teammates were surprised he did not stay at the team hotel on Saturday night, and off he went. I mean, if something like that is true, surely we've reached the point this summer where the Ronaldo experiment can be brought to a premature end, I would think.
I think we're guaranteed that that's going to happen anyway. It was a disaster and a stupid decision from the club to begin with to bring him in, and they're paying the price for it now, and they're getting everything that comes along with the Cristiano Ronaldo show, which is temperament, strops, and a lack of realisation of his, remaining abilities in the game. Similarly, like Edinson Cavani could be hauled over the coals for that as well, because apparently he had a bit of a niggle and just said, "Nah, I don't think it'd probably be up to playing." Like,
I don't want to be part of this. I know it's going to happen.
I almost respect it. I almost respect how Edinson Cavani cares.
But it's like that's where they are. They've got a certain number of big money players, and by big money I mean big wages. essentially dictating their own terms. They're like people who have, the right of say of their own. They're like actors going into big studios, they dictating what films they will and won't be in. And this is only going to continue as long as those kinds of players are there. And it's why there's a horrible atmosphere around that dressing room, and why players are having their fingers pointed at them in newspapers rather than inside dressing rooms. And like, it needs, from the top down, like the biggest and the mother and father of all clear outs. And I know people have been trying to simplify it and say, well, they just need, these 3 areas sorted or whatever. It's more than that. There's a whole flush needs to be done there, without wanting to go all Keane, because God, he's dreadfully boring. But there is a whole flush needs to be done there completely.
Call him a lot of things, not boring.
No.
Well, he's like, do you know what he is? He is to a degree, because he's that critic who can only give, like, you only read him for a 0 out of 10 review. Like, you see why Roy Keane isn't a current manager by dint of his punditry, because he can't tell you what a good team did well. Like, I know he's talking about attitude and that they gave up and all that, but the very best teams, whether it's mid-90s United, whether it's the Kilkenny team at the turn of the decade, whether it's the Dublin footballers that are currently dissolving away, they're, through their ability, they're able to cast a spell over whatever opposition they're playing. And it's a spell that says, midway through the game, listen, geez, no matter how good we are today, there's no chance we're ever going to beat these. And Manchester City have that aura. Liverpool have that aura at the minute. But you're not able to break down, if you're not a good pundit, what it is that constructs that aura. And I don't think Roy Keane is able to tell you what a good team does to beat other teams, whether or not they're Manchester United underperforming or not. And he's so reductive in pretty much every opinion that he brings to the table, regardless of whether he's box office or not.
Well, there is a point there I agree with. I was listening to Gary Neville or not being interviewed by Mick Richards, but they did some, it was like a lad Bible thing, and they were chatting about who's the best pundit, and you have to, much hilarity ensued. And Neville made the point, and there was something in it, to be fair, that he said, well, Mick Richards was saying, look, it is you and Carragher, let's be honest here. And Neville was sort of saying, well, to be fair, on a Monday night when there's analysis required, yeah, I can concede that me and Carragher have something going on. But he said on a Sunday, when people are tuning in and the game is just over, they don't necessarily want the right back was 10 yards too far forward. They want strong opinion, agenda setting, and that is where Keane has his niche. Now, I understand where you're coming from with the boring line, Richie. I think he's got too much presence and he's too acerbic and he's got too much magnetism for it to be boring. Like, it's unbelievably compelling. I made a point, I was in here obviously, I made a point of recording it, not so I could watch the match back, but so I could get the full Keane effect. But you're absolutely right when you say, does he break down a game? No, he doesn't. And I agreed with you on the they just gave up line. The game, they were 2-1 down, they're 3-1 down, they're getting absolutely hockeyed. There's like 5 minutes left. Every team gives up at that stage. They're broken. It's over. There's nothing you can do. You're chasing shadows. You've lost all cohesion. Even if you do try and sprint for a minute or two, you're so quickly played around, you eventually give up. It looks like you're not trying. Now, Neville also said they've given up, and he was disgusted that Man City had 92% possession across a 15-minute spell, which is actually unbelievable.
Yeah.
But Neville did say that, and to be fair, when it comes to attitude, the most damning assessment of the last number of weeks was Ralph Hasenhüttl after the Southampton game, saying, and not even trying to be provocative, just in a very analytical way, saying, well, it's kind of accepted effectively in the league that Manchester United don't like tracking back, and so we based our game around that. And that was the most damning thing. So on the one hand, they just gave up line was a bit reductive and a bit simplistic. On the other hand, there is a work ethic issue in that team, so there was something in it for sure.
Yeah,
there's a fitness issue. And it's a fitness issue because they've waned not just in this game, but in the last 20-25 minutes of more or less their recent tranche of games, for whatever reason, be it they're not coached well enough, their fitness coaching levels aren't up to it.
Ketchup? Have we got rid of ketchup?
There's an issue there with fitness.
There could be ketchup issues. Ketchup issues.
There could be mainlining condiments for all we know. In the dressing room.
The full fat chips are back.
Mark this date down. When the new manager comes in July, I'm going to read a story saying he got rid of ketchup.
It's funny, the Hasenhüttl thing will loom large, I think, for a long time, and it must sting Rangnick in particular, because Hasenhüttl is one of the most direct disciples of that brand of football, that the mastermind of gegenpressing or whatever, he was billed as when he made his entry into English football, but he's just not. He doesn't have the time nor the personnel to implement that sort of strategy with this team. Like, there's attitudinal ailments for sure. Like, you look at Marcus Rashford, who must look. Like, you look at Anthony Elanga and Marcus Rashford, and Elanga is exhibiting the vibrancy and direct running and attitude that Rashford probably did when he first burst onto the scene. And I don't know what about Marcus Rashford's career so far that gives him the illusion that he's made it, that he's a top player, because he carries himself like one, and the briefing that comes from him in his camp suggests he thinks he should be treated better. But you look at the pecking order there, and it was quite an indictment from Rangnick that he played 2 centre midfielders up front ahead of Marcus Rashford, given the dearth of options he had. Like, you look at the striking options United went into this season with, Rashford was already well down the list. Rangnick came in and gave Rashford the benefit of the doubt. In that 4-2-2-2 system, Rashford was played up front and contributed very little. And I appreciate before lockdown, he had that bad injury against Wolves and was supposed to miss the original Euros. And to that point, he was Man United's best player. But in the intervening period, he's been very below par.
No, there's something going on with Rashford, and the briefings today are widespread that Rashford is considering his future.
Yeah.
So, for instance, The Guardian had that with Jamie Jackson, David Heitner and Fabrizio Romano, and I saw Miguel Delaney tweeting that there is disquiet at club about timing of these leaks. As one put it to me, do it after you score a hat-trick. So Rashford is a complicated situation. We might get into it, Danny Mills or Pat Nevin, after 9 o'clock on the football show. But there's something going on there. As for Rangnick, this was a bogus appointment. And it's been shambolic from minute one of his tenure. This guy has no track record, really, of managing a top team, and it's very evident. The 4-2-2-2 system was appalling. I mean, in every game he tried it, it was truly appalling. They were a sham in so many of those early games. The players clearly said, we don't fancy this anymore. So he reverted for a time to a bit more of a conventional, let's put players in their correct positions and have a bit more natural balance about things for a time. I think he almost went back to it a touch yesterday with McTominay, Fred, and then it was Elanga, Sancho, and then like Bruno Fernandes and Pogba. Look, I don't know what his thinking is. He's a very smart man, and he's got a track record of director of football type jobs, and I would actually entrust him to have a big say in the next manager. But as a manager, he has no track record to speak of. You know, being the father of Gegenpressing is one thing. Managing a team of Manchester United stature is not the job for him. It can't be right. It can't be right if you have Bruno Fernandes and Pogba as your 2 strikers against Man City for the first time, and even against Atletico where he's trying these formations for the first time. It's like winging a prayer stuff. He has no authority over the group. They clearly don't trust him. They're not believing in him. And, you know, the interim manager thing is being used as well. What can Per Rangnick do? He's an interim manager. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was an interim manager, but the players bought into what he was giving them, which worked for a time. Let's be a counter-attack inside, and it worked. They have looked at Rangnick and they have said, nothing you're selling makes much sense to us. And that's another reason it's falling apart. He was a woeful appointment. He really was. And it just hasn't worked. And, you know, it's coming home to roost because across the last month, against really average opposition, they were so poor and they got away with it. And not even. Lots of draws in there. And now they're heading into this period where they're facing real opposition. And they're obliterated. And the next month is going to be an absolute car crash.
Yeah, but we should make the point that a lot of these issues predate Ralph Rangnick, and I think the average gap between Manchester United and Man City since Ferguson left is 20 points in the league, which is outrageous given the breadth of time that constitutes. And when was the last time there was a Manchester derby and Man United weren't the underdogs? Because it feels like a long time as well.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, we're not looking at this game in isolation. You know, he's had enough of a body of work at this point to show what he's capable of, and any team can go to the Etihad and get hockeyed. United beating them the last few times is very much an outlier. And yeah, it's less so yesterday's result, it's the previous ones and what looms, because Spurs, if their click, can do a job on United similar to that which they did at Old Trafford last year, and Atletico seem to be hitting a bit of form, so that could be another embarrassing night at the office for them. So the next managerial appointment feels like we say this most summers, but is absolutely huge for them. And there's no absolute surefire candidate between, if Maurizio Pochettino, Eric Ten Hag are the leading candidates, you can't necessarily say it's a sure thing in the same way you could when Klopp went to Liverpool or Guardiola went to Man City. They're still taking a bit of a punt, And that's kind of a remarkable thing to be saying 10 years after Ferguson left.
Oh, it feels like they're starting from scratch all over again. We should get into the news round. It's brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Richie, you were starting with a former Manchester United manager.
Yeah, former clubs and indeed the FAI have led the tributes to Franco Farrel, who has died at the age of 94. The Corkman was West Ham's oldest surviving player, and he also played for Preston and won 9 Ireland caps. O'Farrell was the first Irishman to manage a team to the FA Cup final with Leicester in 1969, and up until Brendan Rodgers repeated the trick last year, he was the only one, and he was personally chosen by Matt Busby, of course, to take over Manchester United in 1971, but lasted only 18 months. O'Farrell would go on to manage Iran and is the only Irish manager to have won an international competition, leading them to Asian Games gold in 1974. Speaking to Off the Ball in 2009, O'Farrell recounted the pressure he was under to succeed in Iran.
So the success of the games really depended on how successful the soccer team would be. And this was all explained to me before I went out, and it appealed to me. They gave me a 2-year contract. And after my experience at United, I needed to get away and reflect and assess where I was going to go for the rest of my time. Having had that bad experience, and having had a bad experience with people who would have expected more from, and the good people didn't turn out to be so good at the end.
Yeah, Franco Farrel there speaking to Off the Ball back in 2009, who's passed away at the age of 94. So tributes to him, I'm sure, across the week. Richie, where are you taking us next?
Munster's uncapped Jeremy Loughman has been drafted into the Ireland squad as Andrew Porter's replacement, while Ian Henderson is back in contention for this Saturday's England game after coming through action for Ulster on Friday night. He had missed the Italy game with COVID-19. Speaking on this morning's OTB AM, Alan Quinlan outlined how Ireland needs to match England.
We just need to be better. We need to be more composed. We probably lacked a little bit of enthusiasm getting into the breakdown, accuracy, which was surprising because it's an area that, as I said, Ireland were really good at. Line out intelligence. And for me, that's about, being a little bit cynical at times. France were quite cynical there. They closed the gap. They threw jumpers across. And you're going to get that from Otoje. You're going to get him niggling in the line out around the side of the breakdown. And Ireland just need to be really alert to what England are trying, the pressure England are going to put on them. Because usually, Jerry, in any sport, it's the pressure you absorb. How can you cope with that? And those kind of moments when you were defending, can you keep your composure, keep your patience in defence? And that's what usually wins games in these tight games, and enables you to play. So I think it's the type of pressure England put on Ireland. I wouldn't be, it's a very, very risky statement, but I wouldn't be overly concerned that England are going to cut us open with their play. I think they can be effective and they'll kick their penalties and they'll try and get into Ireland's half. And for Ireland, they've got to put pressure on Marcus Smith, because if he goes well, he can cut you open. But the flip side of that is if you get in his face and defend really well, he can force things a little bit.
Yeah,
we just need to be better. We need to be more composed. We just need to be better.
Alan Quinlan again. How many more times can we hear Alan Quinlan say that? Guys, we just need to be better. Yeah, we just need to be better. So some texting in various things, and we'll talk to Jerry and Matt Williams after 8 o'clock on Monday Night Rugby. On Ronaldo, somebody says, ridiculous experiment. How many goals has Ronaldo scored since he went back to Man United, including important goals? Roy Keane correctly critical of Man United, the texter adds. Well, I think on Ronaldo, you have to say not just how many goals has he scored, you have to say how many extra has he scored above and beyond whoever the Manchester United number 9 is. Because the Manchester United number 9, especially if they get given penalties, because Bruno missed one, that's one penalty, is going to score lots of goals. I don't think Ronaldo has scored an obscene amount more than any other number 9 that they could pick from would have scored. And then there's all the other extra baggage. He offers absolutely nothing when they don't have the ball. There is an ego there as well, which is causing a problem in the dressing room. All of these constant stories about wanting the captaincy from Harry Maguire cannot be based on nothing. And then his behaviour every time he's substituted or he's on the bench, and the walking off and the tutting and the shaking of the head. This is a player who is behaving like the alpha, but he is 37 years of age and he's not contributing enough to behave like that. He's a problem at that club, and there's no point keeping him around for another season. Just start building now for the future. Like, why bring him in for this? It's a waste of time. There's no future in it. It's only going to be worse next year, because next year his body will be further diminished a year and his ego will not.
Yeah, I think someone made the point that he and David Haye have often proven to be the cause of and solution to many of United's problems this season. Like, on the face of it, to the texter's point, he bailed them out in big games in Europe this season. But the fact that they needed to be bailed out in the first place is indicative of the fact they're not creating enough chances. He's stymieing much of the flow that, the Solskjaer thing was far from perfect, but there was a bit of fluency about their attack at least, and it was built around Bruno Fernandes, who at least is adjacent to world class. Like, he can get to that level, or has sporadically been in that sphere. Whereas you've just totally alienated your best player here.
And you need movement and hard running to function as a defence, and even in attack as well. Take the Sancho goal yesterday, this rare moment of something. Think of the run Fernandes makes around Sancho to open up that little bit of space for him. Ronaldo's not going to make that run.
Yeah.
Not in a million years. And you need that kind of movement. He doesn't offer it. He's standing there. There's a degree of serve me. The whole team revolves around him, and it's predictable. It's not working.
And I'm not, De Gea was far from to blame yesterday, but at this point that he the pinball element of some of the goals Man United concede, where De Gea is rooted to his line and has unbelievable reflexes, granted, but United's defence is so deep.
Well,
because he doesn't come off his line and Harry Maguire wants to step back. So they're literally, often the goals United concede are these drag backs, and that's like an awful happenstance when you're coming up against Man City, because that's their favourite type of goal, get to the end line and pull back. And that first one looked like it was happening in slow motion. Harry Maguire, he let the ball run through his legs for the second goal when he could have just cleared it, and that was at a point when United were playing okay. So it doesn't help when your captain is at the root of these things either.
No, it doesn't. And potentially clinging to hang on to his captaincy, which, again, that can't be helping him in that situation. On Roy Keane then, the texts are flowing in mainly on Keane. Plenty of positive analysis from Keane that's interesting too. Not everything needs to be X's and O's analysis. That's what's boring, not Roy Keane. Somebody else says, not everybody wants to hear 45 excuses for the technical reasons why United are shite. Sometimes it's because the players are massively underperforming and have done so for a number of managers. Sometimes passion, emotion is actually what's needed. It's not always a cliche. Somebody else, Richie, I don't think is representing the populace in this Keane opinion. I think it says option. I think he means opinion. Even the most ardent ABUs love Keane's punetry. And then one other one. Hi lads, Rashford has missed top quality coaching from Rashford has missed top quality coaching from a top coaching staff and manager for a number of years now. His development has been totally destroyed. Look at the improvement in Jota under Klopp in such a short space of time. Rashford should leave to fulfil his potential, if anything.
What top quality coaching did Jamie Vardy have at Rashford's age? Do you know what I mean? He came along, and that doesn't mean, I don't know, whatever about paring it back to just an attitude problem or a temperament problem. There is a certain element of that with Rashford. On the face of it, he's got ability, he's got the raw materials to be a good player, but he seems to have missed that middle, the bridging gap of actually executing. And there were times people were saying him and Mbappe were on the same, parallel lines. And that's a humorous comparison now to look back on.
Rashford definitely played a lot of last season injured, and then had
his own. Joe, he
had the surgery. Well, I think it's admirable that he did. I think that explains his performances last year, and then had the surgery this year, and he's come back and hasn't been right. I just wonder if there's something not right with him physically, because the way he's just consistently not tracking back doesn't tally with the person I suspect he is.
Well, another thing, he's got a huge PR team, which is no secret, and a lot of the times these leaks, the insinuation, and often what I would have thought was that the players are literally ringing journalists and telling them not happy with this, but he's got so many people around him that I can understand it's been a tough couple of months and you're going to vent to some degree, and when you've got 50 people around you, they're going to talk to people, and that's how these things come out. And it's not just unique to him. It seems like everybody in the Manchester United dressing room has a extensive enough speed dial list. But you don't hear leaks coming from any other club hardly. It's every time you open a newspaper in the morning, it's Manchester United.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It is. Richie, sorry, where else do you want to take us?
Where we go? Andrew Porter is unlikely to be available for Leinster until the quarterfinals of the Heineken Champions Cup. The province confirming the prop will miss up to 8 weeks with an ankle injury. Porter's Leinster teammate Jordan Larmour has seen his Six Nations campaign ended meanwhile by a hip injury. And Leinster confirmed today that CEO Mick Dawson is going to step down at the end of this season after 20 years at the helm, and head coach Leo Cullen has led the tributes.
He's had an amazing impact. Obviously for me, I was leaving school around that time, so leaving the school in '96, and whatever, coming into the senior team at a little bit later after that, and so he's been there all the way through my career, and he's been an unbelievable support to me personally in the role, particularly from a coaching point of view. So yeah, he'd be a huge loss, because he's very much part of the fabric of the place here. But we wish him well the next chapter of his life. But he's been a great character, and just as I said, just the real strength is the connection of bringing together, I guess, some of the amateur ethos, values, and staying connected to the professional team and be able to grow the professional team as well. So I think he's done a pretty remarkable job over the last 20 years.
Now, we do have Premier League football this evening, Rich.
Yeah, Everton looking nervously over their shoulders ahead of tonight's Premier League trip to Tottenham. Frank Lampard's side sitting just one place above the relegation zone, but do have games in hand on those around them. Matt Doherty starts again for Spurs tonight. His opposite number, or indeed same number for the Republic of Ireland, Seamus Coleman, captains Everton tonight. And Donny van de Beek matches the amount of Premier League starts he made for Manchester United at Everton tonight. His fourth start in all. Jordan Pickford making his 200th. And kick-off is at 8 o'clock. And after accounting for both Arsenal and Leicester already, Nottingham Forest can set up an FA Cup sixth-round tie with Liverpool tonight. They take on Huddersfield in the last remaining fifth-round encounter. And kick-off at the City Ground is in 2 minutes' time.
I think with Keane, Richie, because you've got loads of texts in, by the way, lots agreeing with you, some disagreeing with you. I definitely see both sides of it. I do take your point. It would be great to see Roy Keane tactically break down a game. I'd love to get that insight from him. And the fact that he's never done it means you wonder if it's there, because he was maybe an instinctive player and a brilliant one, obviously. And then the other thing is as well, he does steer the conversation straight to his wheelhouse, which is character, DNA. What went wrong here for Manchester United?
Attitude.
They didn't want it. And that's where he is the authority above anyone. If it comes to dedication and DNA and moral fibre, I mean, I'm ready to talk. That's and he does. There's no doubt he steers every conversation there. And a part of me does watch it and think, can you really make it as a Premier League footballer and then a Premier League footballer at Manchester United if you're the type of person who routinely gives up? I'm not really sure you can. And that is the failing of that punditry. But on what people want, I was thinking there's that Malcolm Gladwell example where you ask people what type of coffee they like, and they say, I like dark, rich, strong coffee. But then when you do the blindfold test, they like weak, milky coffee. And equally, people say, what kind of journalism you want? It's I want, balanced, long-form journalism. And then the most clicked article in every newspaper is a Conor McGregor story. So I think there is a degree of, I want analysis. I want analysis. But deep down, Richie, you want Roy Keane. Just admit it.
Yeah, you're quoting Malcolm Gladwell. I'm reminded of Sid Vicious's quote about the man on the street, which probably doesn't bear repeating, the second half of which anyway. But yeah, each to their own, I guess.
I'm a man on the street.
I'm not finishing the quote, Joe. We get pulled off air.
So, give us one last story then.
Yeah, the sad news of the weekend that Shane Warne's family have called his death a tragedy that will never come to terms with. An autopsy on the 52-year-old Australian found that the man who revived leg spin bowler died of natural causes. He was found unresponsive in his Thai villa in Koh Samui on Friday. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has led the tributes to what he's called one of the greatest characters in the country and announced that Warne would receive a full state funeral, just a measure of how the man is felt back home in Australia.
Yeah, shocking. Really awful. We'll chat to Matt Williams a little bit about Shane Warne as well after 8 o'clock. Matt's a huge cricket fan, and obviously there's the Aussie connection as well. So we'll do that after 8 as well as rugby when Jerry Thornley joins us. Ronan, Mullen, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Richie McCormack, thanks very much.
God bless.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's Cash Machine.